Okay, here we are. Let's see, we are, all right. This is our Zoom class live for week 3. Welcome to what looks like it's going to be the recording for you. We're sharing the screen. I'm going to go through the PowerPoints here a little bit. Two very important things, and definitely areas that organizational psychologists get involved in, and that is evaluating employee performance, like appraisals. You will hear talk of this in your career as an organizational psychologist if you go that way, or even as an employee or a manager or an owner of a company. You will be involved in evaluating employee performance. Sometimes it can be very informal, and sometimes it can be very formal. As many of you know, I am an adjunct professor here at Central Christian College, but I have a full-time job with a school district, I think this 6th largest school district in the country, Broward County Schools, and with 30,000 employees, 22,000 of those are teachers. We have a very elaborate and some might say convoluted employee appraisal system. And these two subjects go pretty much hand in hand. I'm not going to do every slide. I'm going to hit the main ones. When you look at effective appraisal systems, you want to have something in place that is going to be accurate, is going to be fair, is not going to be seen as subjective. Whether or not it is subjective, it should not be seen as subjective. It should be definitely objective so that it's fair. The problem when it's subjective, well, there's many problems when an employee appraisal is subjective. The employees can feel like it is unfair. There could be some things that are perceived as employees being treated with favoritism, or on the other end, where they're being treated unfairly by the manager for reasons other than their job performance. It could be a personal feeling or a grudge held over or any number of things, but employees need to feel like it is not subjective. In fact, they need to feel that it's very objective. So you need to develop a system and some kind of what we might call a rubric to evaluate employee performance. Now you have to, this goes back a little bit to the job analysis and job description that we talked about in, previously in this course, where, what is the objective of the job? There are many jobs out there now, unfortunately, even with very strong organizations, where the objective will be written down and worked out, and seemingly very clear what the employee has to do. The employee has to sell, 100 widgets a week. Just to use we're always selling widgets. We use widgets as just a made up thing a lot of times in organizational psychology. Anyway, but then if my objective is to sell 100 widgets a week, and I know I have to talk to maybe 300 customers in order to sell 300 widgets. But then the employee is given additional duties beyond selling widgets, maybe writing sales reports and going to trainings and going to meetings. So if you figure it's going to be a 40-hour week or maybe even a 45-hour week, and you map out, you can actually do this. Employees have done this. They've actually mapped out how much time is spent in meetings and how much time is spent in trainings and how much time is spent doing paperwork, and they're not making their, it's very easy to say sales quota. It could be manufacturing or whatever. It's very easy that they can say, look, you say I can sell 100 widgets in 45 hours, but I'm really, with all the other duties that you're giving me, I only have about 22 hours to do this. That's why I'm falling short. So that's the counter. So the employer has to have uh, a good measuring system, and the job analysis has to be good, and the objectives have to be fair. We talk about what is the purpose of the appraisal. My phone just went off. I want to make sure it's not one of you guys trying to get in touch with me. Let me just make sure. And in fact, it is not. Okay, so what is the purpose of it? The purpose of the appraisal is to let employees know how they're doing, and to also, let management know how the employee is doing, where their deficits are. Do they need some extra help or extra training to meet their performance goals, whether it be sales, whether it be manufacturing, whether it be teaching. In fact, teachers have to do this too. We get appraisals. We get appraisals from students at the end of every class. We want those appraisals because we look at those to see how well we're doing and how we can perhaps improve our practice. So the purpose, we have to determine that, and it's not the same in every situation, but it can be. It can be. I shouldn't say can be, but there can be some overlap, if you will. So certification is one of the things that we can't forget. Like sometimes employees, the reason for the appraisal has to be someone has to give them a passing score on their performance. Another thing, who's going to do the appraisal? Sometimes your peers can do it. Your colleagues can do the appraisal. Sometimes it's just a frontline supervisor. Sometimes the owner of the company can do the appraisal. One of the things I do like is the 360-degree feedback. This is where a manager, typically someone in a position of management authority, they will send out questionnaires that are anonymous, surveys, if you will, to several people, sometimes dozens of people that report to that person, and they will provide the feedback to the manager or supervisor. This can be very helpful because you can see patterns. For example, one of the things that sometimes comes up is you may have some employees that report to you that are not doing very well. Well, it may turn out that the reason that they're not doing very well is they don't quite understand their direction. They don't understand what it is you expect them to do. So when the 360 feedback comes in, that might become very evident to a manager to say, oh goodness, okay, maybe I need to make my directions more clear. Maybe I need to put them in writing. Maybe after I give directions to my employees, I need to make sure it's clear with them. I can do that in several different ways. I can have them sort of repeat back the directions to me, clear up anything. Maybe I need to check on them more frequently. Maybe that might come back in the feedback also. Maybe employees would say, well, I'm given a task and it's a 3-month project, and I get this job, and I don't hear from a manager until a week before it's supposed to be complete, and that's when I find out that I'm off track here. So there's a lot of great things that can come with a 360 feedback. One thing that sales companies do, or sales divisions do quite a bit for performance appraisals, is they will rank their employees or their salespeople, their sales force, on who gets the most sales. I love the field of sales, by the way. It's to me, it's an extension of human relations, but when it's done right. But most people, when they think of sales, they don't have a good idea of what a salesperson is, because most salespeople don't do a very good job, and most sales organizations don't do a good job. But you probably, as an adult, have probably come across somewhere, not very many. In fact, most of the time it's not the case, but a salesperson who has really put your interests ahead of his or hers. And that's a good salesperson, because they've actually helped you. They've answered your questions. They've taken your time. They're not out just to get your money. they know that if they help you, they may be able to, if they actually do help you, they'll probably make a sale, or if not, that's okay, because their goal is to help you. And that might be saying, well, no, I don't have the product for you, but someone else does, because they know in the long run, not right away, but in the long run, you will refer business to them, or you will come back to them when they do have something you need. So anyway, that's, I go off on a little bit of a tangent there, but sales divisions and sales companies, insurance sales and whatnot, that's one way they do the employee performance. They rank order. It's interesting. I've never been a big fan of this, because typically it's the same 20% that's always in the top 20%. One guy might get top salesperson for 1 month, and then somebody else gets it, but the guy who won it, the previous, now he's in second place, and then he comes back in first place, and then then the guy who was in third for a couple of months, now he comes in first place, and it's the same 20%. So they usually post that up on the board. Not something we do necessarily for grades, but in a class, but for sales, and they rank that so everyone can see everybody's doing. So it really doesn't do much to motivate most people. Sometimes you'll find, every so often, you'll find that person who has a bad month who says, I'm not going to see my name on the bottom of the list again. I'm going to get up there. But that's very rare. Most of the time, it's the same guys. And then what happens is those top 20% will keep on performing, and the others who are not doing well, they'll leave the company, and they'll be replaced by another 80% that aren't doing that well. As new people come in, you might get someone else occasionally who comes and does a good job, but that's not the norm. So anyway, there's better ways. So okay, so if that's not the solution, what is a better way? A better way is to do individual appraisals and help people determine their goals, and then help people determine where they are falling short, and then help people learn how to do better if they want to do it. A lot of time in sales, it can be a tough job, so some people need to be counseled out of their position, but nonetheless, it's better than having them hang around being unsuccessful, not doing themselves or your business any good. So I'm not a big fan of the comparison. That's just my personal experience. And there's an example. I'll back up over here. And you guys will have this PowerPoint of the ranking method. You got people's names there and how they do, but typically it's going to be the same few ladies and gentlemen at the top of the list all of the time. I'm gonna switch gears here. In just a second, but I do want to just mention the importance of letting the employee performance evaluation be fair. There are so many, it's not a surprise, it's not a secret, I should say, that most employee appraisals are perceived as unfair. Most employee appraisals aren't very good. Most of them are done in-house. It's really, in all honesty, it almost takes, just look at the research out there, it's on the internet, it takes sort of an outside person, and I'm going to be a proponent here for an organizational psychologist or an organizational development company or that employs organizational psychologists to really come in and do a good job with a company. If it's done in-house, it's not very good. There's one that I'm very familiar with, very convoluted, very intricate employee appraisal system and way to do things, where it is subjective. It's not only perceived as, and it's certainly perceived as subjective. So many factors on the employee's performance are based on things that are completely out of the employee's control, So not only is it subjective because the manager of each sort of little shop, if you will, and it's a huge organization, they come in and they evaluate it. So it's subjective in as much as what is considered acceptable to one manager is not going to be deemed as acceptable to another manager. And to yet a third manager, it's going to be seen as superior. So in that way, it's subjective. More importantly, the employee's performance is based almost well over half anyway on factors that he or she has no control over. And it's very clear, there's research that supports that the factors that are being measured are the employee has no control over. So it's unfair. I mean, clearly, and this happens. This is unfortunately not uncommon, like I said. So I'm going to end that part of the presentation here. I just want to touch on something else, and that is this: employee feedback. In a different light here, employee feedback, feedback on performance feedback is kind of what we talked about with the appraisal. But one of the biggest motivators for employees is informational feedback. Now, I'm going to make very clear on this. A big motivator for employees is informational feedback. Why am I emphasizing informational? Because it's different than evaluative feedback. Employees who are evaluated, they're getting kind of a grade. You did good, you did bad, you did average. That is sometimes it's not motivating very well, and sometimes it's quite it's going to have quite the opposite effect. It's going to be demotivating because the employee is going to feel bad about him or herself. But when we're given informational feedback, we're not evaluating the employee. We're evaluating the employee's performance. So there's a little bit of a third person thing going on there, like it's a disconnect in a good way, because the employee doesn't feel like it's personal, and it's not personal. It is based on what he did, and you can change what you did. For instance, if I want you to sell 100 widgets this week and you only sold 85, okay, well, let's see how I can get you to sell 15 more widgets. How can I help you to meet your goal of 15 more widgets? Now, understand, we've already got 85. You did that already, but that's taken care of. I'm going to show you a way that you can maybe manage your time better. Maybe you can be clearer in your communication. Perhaps be a little bit more informative with the clients. Perhaps close one more time. Whatever the case may be. So now, rather than telling you, yeah, you did 85% or whatever, no, I'm giving you informational feedback. I like how, and a great thing for informational feedback, this has been researched. It is very much, the research will tell you that you tell them the specific behavior they did. The manager tells the employee the specific behavior they did that they're trying to shape. Now, it might be something that they did that was good, so they want to shape that behavior, and so you want to reinforce it. I like how you remain calm when that customer was getting very upset, and I like how at the end everything went well. I like how you have been on time for work the last 2 weeks. I know that was a challenge for you before because of your duties in the morning, but I like how you've been on time. When I mentioned before about this being researched, one of the great things about it is this: we know that to shape employees' behavior, to get them to do better and better, it's the same thing with kids. There's a 3-to-1 ratio. Some people are on board with this, but by and large, most organizational psychologists, in fact, clinical psychologists, agree that a 3-to-1 ratio is important. What do I mean, 3-to-1? 3-to-1 ratio means this: 3 positive reinforcers to 1 redirection. So you can say, Mrs. Smith, I really like how, if Mrs. Smith is my employee, Mrs. Smith, I really like how you remained calm when talking to that upset customer. I really appreciate how you showed her there are some other options that might be better for her. And I like how you closed the deal and actually got her to buy more of our widgets. That's fantastic. I like it also maybe next time if you would get me involved in the process sooner. And that's a very sort of generic 3-to-1. I gave 3 positives, and then I gave 1 sort of redirection or reshaping of behavior. It doesn't have to be in that order, and it doesn't have to be exact. It can't be exact. You're not a robot, but you want to keep that ratio in mind as a manager, or as a parent for that matter, or as a spouse for that matter, to have that 3-to-1 ratio when trying to shape behavior. And you know, part of the issue I mentioned before about employee appraisals is they're too long. You know, sometimes it's a yearly appraisal. That is kind of uncool because that doesn't really help the employee. A good manager in a good organization, even though we know we have these formal evaluations that we have to do, they will come around and more informally give informational feedback, and that really helps motivate employees. When I hear, 6 months after something happened about it, it doesn't do anything to shape behavior. So that's real important. If I hear, using the scenario I just gave, if I told Mrs. Smith, 6 months after she dealt with this really tough employee, that doesn't make any difference at all. I hate to even pretend like there's something to be said there, because there isn't. It's just a big waste. At that point, it's a history lesson. So, the important thing is to, again, be human about it, and keep people in the loop, if you will. Just looking up something here. I want to. Okay, so the slides do a real good job. I hope you do the reading and everything like that, and the discussions have been going very well. I still got I owe you guys some grades. I do realize that I'm still kind of catching up from the hurricane, so I hope to have everything all caught up by tomorrow. I go to church on Saturday, so I'll be in church again tomorrow as well. As a matter of fact, for at least an hour, or maybe an hour and a half. But other than that, I'm dedicated to catching up in all the courses that I teach. And so anyway, keep the faith. I appreciate your patience with me, as I'm not complaining. I had a little bit to deal with here, but we have one classmate who really was without power quite a bit. She's catching up. I won't mention her name, but we can keep her in prayer and others in prayer too. So I just want to finish up with our Bible verse. We're going to go with Romans 5:3. And not only that, but we also glory in tribulations, knowing that tribulation produces perseverance. And I'll go in verse 4 says, and perseverance, character, and character, hope. But right now, all you need to know is Romans 5, verse 3 for our Bible verse that will get you the points for the extra credit. And I'll hopefully be logging those. Everything will be all done. You know how to reach me if you need to get in touch with me. The best way is through the message tab. That's where I check 2 or 3 times a day, and that is the best way. Emails get lost, unfortunately. I try not to, but it's tough sometimes because I get so many emails, and if I don't even recognize, because you'll get you'll have your email address there, and it could be Jack and Jill the Carpenters 123, and I don't know who that is. But if it comes in the message tab, I see obviously it's in the class. I see what it is, and I can respond quickly. So just keep that in mind. Keeping our classmates in mind. I'm not sure what everyone's going through. I have no complaints. I had a little thing with the hurricane, but by no means have I dealt with what other people have dealt with. I had loss of power and internet, but God is good. 2 classmates I spoke to either on the phone or message this week, going through some tough times, so I won't share, but do keep those classmates in mind, and I will be praying for you, and I will talk to you soon. Let's see here. God bless.